As we are here in lesson 10 for module 5, and we're going to continue our work with fractions. And yesterday, I know that we did something where we learned something new. We learned about fractions greater than one whole, and I promised you that we're going to continue to work on that, and we will, just not today. Today, we're going to learn something else, sort of new. More like applying things we already sort of know in a new way. But I promise you we're also not done with fractions greater than a whole, so we will get back to that. But first, we're going to compare fractions. So compare the size of fractions. We've talked loosely about this as a class before, but we haven't done a formal sort of lesson on it. So this will be our first time really trying to develop a good understanding of how you can compare the size of fractions and determine what is greater than or less than when a fraction is greater than or less than another fraction. So let's dive right in and take a look at the problem set. We're also going to, in person in class, look at these. I have these things called fraction stacks they're physical things that I can hold up and show you or put under a camera and show you. In non-COVID times, I can actually let you use that are going to show you how to compare the size of fractions, give you a hands-on model of different fractions. So we will be using those. And we also are going to have, all of you will also get a tool to use yourselves. It's a bunch of pieces of paper in it, put together in a book, and basically the way we cut them out shows the different sizes of fractions, and it's a great resource. So there are other tools that are going to go along with this lesson to help you understand how to compare fractions. For the majority of this lesson, we are going to be comparing unit fractions, where 1 is in the numerator. That is the easiest way to start. We can make some generalizations when we're doing that. Things get a little bit more tricky when we change the numerator to something other than 1. So for now, we are going to just talk about unit fractions, where 1 is in the numerator. So we're going to shade in whatever fraction is shown. So 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, one third, and 1/6. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and compare some of these. So 1/2 is greater than or less than 1/4. Well, 1/2 is here and 1/4 is there. 1/2 is bigger, so bigger means greater. So 1/2 is greater than 1/4 because 1/2 is exactly double 1/4. We'll go over to B. Here, the trick to this is going to be able to see all the fraction strips and the problems at the same time. Could be a challenge for the camera. 1/6 is less than or greater than 1/2. Well, 1/6 is right here. And if we look at 1/6, then I'll use my pencil here. If I draw a line straight up, you can see that 1/2 extends well past where 1/6 goes. So 1/6 is less than 1/2. Let's do all of these, and then we're going to make some generalizations about them after. There we go. Can we fit everything in there? 1/3 is less than or greater than 1/2. Well, 1/2 again is here. 1/3 is here. You can see that 1/3 is comes to about here, where there's additional stuff in the 1/2. So 1/2 is greater than 1/3, which means we need to mark less than 1/3 is less than 1/2. As a review, we have the greater than and less than signs, right? And we always put the number that is larger on the open side. Larger, smaller. We're going to be using those as well. So the opening always goes to the larger number. Just putting that in here because it's something that's going to come up here shortly. 1/3 is less than or greater than 1/6. So 1/3 is right here. 1/6 is right here, right? 1/3 is clearly larger than 1/6. So it's greater than 1/6. And the last one's 1/8 is less than or greater than 1/6. You know what? Let's hold on for a second. Let's stop right there. Let's make some generalizations about those, and then we'll go on and see if we can do the bottom ones without using the guide up here. So I noticed that I have 1/2 is greater than 1/4. Okay, so let's look at the numerators are equal. We can't compare those; they're both 1. But the denominators we can compare, 2 and 4. Now, people's instinct is to say, well, 4 is greater than 2, so why isn't this the other way around? Why aren't we saying that 1/2 is less than 1/4? I don't know. Let's look at the next one and see if we can figure that out. 1/6 is less than 1/2. Again, 6 is bigger than 2, so why are we saying that it's less than 2? Well, if we look up here, we can see that, like, let's do the 1/4 and 1/2 one. 1/2 means that this whole shape has just gotten split into 2 parts. It's only split it once into 2 parts. This one's been split 3 times into 4 parts. So a bigger denominator just means that a whole has been split up more times. And if one equal size whole has been split up more times, that means each part of it is smaller. The way we talked about this was in the context of sharing a birthday cake, I believe. And we said that if you were sharing a birthday cake and you had the option of having 1/4 of the cake or 1/8 of the cake, well, 1/4 means that there's one whole cake is split into 4 pieces, whereas 1/8 means that same cake gets split into 8 pieces. So each piece has to be smaller. So the smaller the number on the bottom, the smaller the denominator, the bigger the fraction. Let me say that one more time. The smaller the denominator, the bigger the fraction, the closer it is to 1. It's when we're working with unit fractions. When we're working with unit fractions. That's an important part of that sentence there. 1/8 is less than or greater than 1/6. Well, 6 is smaller than 8, which means 1/8 is less than 1/6. Because 1/8 means that whole has been cut up 8 times, whereas over here the whole has only been cut up 6. So if one whole gets cut up 8 times, it's going to be smaller pieces than if it's only cut up 6 times. 1/8 is less than or greater to 1/4. 1/8 is less than 1/4. Again, this is that example we just talked about with a cake. You could have 1 out of 8 pieces or 1 out of 4 pieces of the same whole. Well, 1 out of 4 pieces is going to be much bigger, twice as big as, in fact, of 1/8. And lastly, 1/2 is greater than 1/8 because the 2 is smaller than the 8. So one whole being split into 2 pieces means each piece is much bigger than that same whole thing being split into 8 pieces. Now we come over here to this last one, which is, we're shifting gears here all of a sudden. We're going to use some other information that we have available to us. 9/8 is greater than or less than 2/2. And everything we just said to, like, oh, okay, look at that. But the 2 is smaller, so that only got cut once into 2 pieces, and that got cut 7 times into 8 pieces. However, you notice that we can't do that way because the numerators are not equal. They're not 1 and they're not equal to each other. So we have to think about, how else can I solve this? Well, 9/8, what do I notice about that? I notice that the 9 is larger than the 8, so this is greater than 1. That's above 1. Whereas 2/2 is the same as 1. That's like saying I ate 2/2 of the cake. I ate the whole cake, not something I had divided, by the way. So 9/8 is bigger than 1, and this is 1, so 9/8 is greater than 2/2. So sometimes you have to use a little bit of, do a little bit of thinking about some of the stuff that we've learned in previous lessons to answer some of these. All right, here we go. Lily needs 1/3 cup of oil and 1/4 cup of water to make muffins. Will Lily use more oil or more water? Explain using pictures, numbers, or words. And words. I'm going with the word or. I think you could explain it with any of the above. So we have 1/3 and 1/4. And I'm going to use my greater than or less than sign. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to draw 2 holes, 2 equal holes. This is where drawing accurately does help, right? So I have 1/4 shaded in and 1/3 shaded in, and you could see from my drawing that 1/3 is bigger than 1/4, but you also could determine that by saying they're both unit fractions. They both have 1 in the numerator, and the third, the smaller number means it's been cut less times, it's been divided up less times, which means each piece is going to be bigger. And so that's that. I would also write that. I'd say 1/3 is bigger because the whole has been split less time, so each piece of the whole is larger. And that would be a very complete answer you'd make your teacher very happy if you wrote that out in sentence form. Me or any other teacher you ever have. So now we're going to use those greater than, equal to, or less than signs to compare these. 1/3 and 1/5. 1/3, the denominator is smaller. That means the fraction is larger when you're comparing unit fractions. 1/6 compared to 1/6. Well, those are exactly the same things, right? Notice how I'm writing out the fractions here. That way I can see them. It's good practice just to transition from one form to another, but it's also allowing me just to look at them in the same format. 1/16 and 1/11. First step, make sure I'm comparing the same numerators, in this case unit fractions with 1 in the numerator. And then I look at my denominators. Well, 16ths means that's been split up a ton of times. 11ths has been split up a lot too, just not as many as 16ths. So 1/16 is less than 1/11. 1/7 and 1/4. They both have 1 in the numerator, so I can compare them just by looking at the denominators. I have 7 being split up more times than 4th, so 1/7 is smaller than 1/4. Same thing here, numerators are equal, they're both 1. 1/10 is greater than 1/12 because being split up, a whole being split up 10 times means each piece is bigger than if that whole were split up into 12 pieces. And the last one is 1 whole, which is like 1 out of 1, versus 2 halves, which they're both 1. 1 whole, which we could just write it like that. 2 halves also equals 1. So those are the same thing. I'm going to leave the extension. That's something that I want you guys to think about on your own. But I'm going to leave you to think about that. And we're going to move on to the last word problems. Your friend Eric says, let me move it down a little bit. Your friend Eric says that 1/6 is greater than 1/5 because 6 is greater than 5. Is Eric correct? Use words, pictures, yada, yada, yada to explain. So he's saying that 1/6 is greater than 1/5 because the 6 is bigger than the 5. And if the 6 is bigger than the 5, then this side must be larger. But as we discussed earlier, that's not true when you're talking about fractions with the same numerator, 1 in this case. When you're talking about fractions with the same numerator, you look at the denominator, and the smaller denominator is the larger fraction. So we would flip that around and say 1/6 is actually less than 1/5. Because 1/6 means that whole has been split up into 6 pieces. 1/5 means that same whole has only been split into 5 pieces. So each piece is slightly larger in that case. All right, I know that was a lot. I know it's 2 days in a row of introducing sort of new material to you, and challenging material as well. So please ask questions if you have them. Both of these things, the lesson 9 and lesson 10, are things that we're going to continue talking about. As I shared in the beginning, I will show you visuals. I will give you a tool to use yourself in class. And there's a bunch of different ways I could show this to you, and I will show this to you. So if it was a challenge for you at first, don't worry. There'll be more ways to develop an understanding of it as we go. All right, guys, keep up the good work.